I stared up at the mountain. The summit was pretty far away, but not as far as I would have liked it to be. Mainly because part of said summit was proceeding down the mountain in our general direction. As I watched, the nascent avalanche spread, sending more and more boulders tumbling downhill until it was certain we would be caught in its path. The distance and the lower gravity made its progress seem eerily slow, but I knew it would be moving plenty fast enough when it reached where we were. "Come on!" I shouted. "We gotta go!" Not waiting for a reply, I started bounding down the mountain track at the best speed I could make. In prep for this trip, I'd practiced moving in 2/3 gravity in the coldsuit, so I was pretty sure on my feet. If I kept up this rate of travel, I estimated, I could be back at the Bubble 1 and into the air before the avalanche ever reached me. Except that after just half a dozen strides, I realized Saduk and Smith were no longer with me. Snatching a glance over my shoulder revealed that they were indeed following in my wake, but were already beginning to lag behind. "Saduk," I yelled. "Come on! We've got to outrun this thing." "What a novel idea," he snarked back. "I never would have thought of it." Another dozen paces proved that they weren't just taking time getting into their stride. They had a top speed, and it wasn't anywhere near good enough. I could outpace the avalanche if I didn't waste any more time, but there was no way in hell they were going to pull it off. So I slowed down to let them catch me up while I tried to figure a way out of this. "Lieutenant Hernandez, what are you doing?" It figured that Commodore Lorimar would be keeping tabs on my suit readouts. "Get out of there." "I'm sorry, ma'am." I said the words with real regret. Disobeying an order like this was going to absolutely torpedo my career, but I couldn't see any other way out of it. I can't do that. I can't leave them behind. I'd been briefed extensively on the political and diplomatic ramifications of this visit before I ever tried on the coldsuit for the first time. Saduk and I were basically the faces of the human bubbler alliance. If anything happened to either of us, especially if I left him to die, it would send shockwaves through both our cultures. And besides, like hell was I going to abandon my best bubbler friend like that? I owed it to him, and to his wife and kids, to get us all out of this alive and kicking, or aggressively wriggling as the case may be. The question was, how? "Drag them along, or carry them," she ordered. "I don't care how you do it, just get yourself out of there." That wasn't really a solution either. Bubblers were pretty squishy, and if I tried to drag them along by a tentacle apiece, I risked pulling the appendages clean off. And if I picked them up and carried them, the suit might just accidentally crush them to death before I got them to safety. Which meant I had to think of another way. "Saduk," I said, as he and Smith came up alongside me. I lengthened my stride accordingly to match their speed. "Does this mountain have any particular cultural value?" "Well, we named it," he said doubtfully as he hustled along on rippling locomotion tentacles. "What do you... Oh. Oh." "Oh?" asked Captain Smith from the other side. "What do you mean, oh?" "Your call, Saduk," I said crisply. "Yay or nay?" To his credit, he barely hesitated. "We can always rename it." "Good." I came to a skidding halt and turned to face back up the trail. "Run. Run fast. And when I call out, get behind cover. Going now." He grabbed Smith by a spare tentacle and urged him down the trail. "Come on. The scary human says run, we run. But why is she not running? Why must we take cover?" The other bubbler's voice dwindled down the pathway. I took a moment to steady my breathing. My heat gauge was up another few points, pretty damn close to the danger mark as it was. Whoever had briefed Captain Smith had clearly elided over a few very important aspects. That was something that would need to be addressed later if we all survived. Above me, the avalanche thundered down toward me. Even in this lower gravity, its acceleration was impressive. I doubted I would survive an impact from even one of those boulders. "Lieutenant Hernandez?" Commodore Lorimar's voice was low and steady. "Are you sure this is a wise course of action?" "No," I said frankly. "But it's the best of a series of bad options. This gives Saduk and me the best chances of survival." "Understood." She sighed, sounding weary. "We'll monitor the situation. Good luck, Lieutenant." "Thank you, ma'am." I checked my rangefinder. The closest boulders were 250 meters away and closing fast. 200. 150. "Setting up thermal dump." 100. "Take cover." 50 meters. Activating now. When setting up a thermal dump, it was possible to send the heat in all directions, or to vent in one direction only. Although I'd chose that direction to be forward, I knew that the heat could reflect behind me, and even a fraction of the thermal bloom I was about to create would be utterly fatal to bubblers. Which was why I'd told Saduk to take cover. A seam cracked open along the front of my suit. The thermal batteries in the cold suit were very efficient, and held rather a lot of heat. This spilled out toward the oncoming avalanche, to devastating effect. Huge volumes of rocky ground simply flashed straight from solid to gaseous, existing as liquid for a split second. The tumbling boulders of oxygen and nitrogen coming one way hit the wavefront of thermal energy going the other, and one was confirmed as the unstoppable force. Spoilers. It wasn't the avalanche. Even having expected to melt most of the landscape and deal with the liquid afterward, I was shocked and stunned by the pure destruction. But there was more to come. The upper end of the avalanche had yet to arrive. Cold began to creep into my limbs and chest as the inherent chill of Faz Reap pushed past the compromised insulation and began to leach the very heat out of my body. I had to hold on. Sadek was depending on me. I couldn't let his wife or kids down. Violent shudders racked my body. "That's it, Lieutenant!" Lorimar's voice was distant, hollow to my ears. "The avalanche is done. Button up and get back to the ship now, now. It was the repetition that got me moving, as naval discipline intended it to. I sent the command to close the seam and felt the cold suit trying to warm me up. But I'd depleted nearly all the thermal batteries, and I could barely feel my hands and feet. Turning, I began stumbling downhill again, trudging through the rapidly freezing slush, which was all that remained of the avalanche. I made it another 200 yards, past the last of the slush, before I stumbled and fell to all fours, panting for breath, trying to muster the energy to move through the horrific chill that consumed my body from all sides. And then I felt tentacles lifting me, supporting me. "Careful," came Saduk's voice. "She's still got magma clinging to her boots. Don't let it touch you." "She's still boiling hot," said Smith from the other side. "My sash is smoking." Turning my head, I could see that the two bubblers had removed their sashes and were using them as padding to protect themselves against the heat still radiating from the cold suit. The area around the seam would have been white hot, but even my arms were more like red hot. Well, to them, it was searing heat. To me, it was beyond Arctic cold. "Let it smoke," Saduk told him. "I'll buy you a new one. We've got to get her to her ship before she dies." In a bizarre parody of a three-legged race, we stumbled down the mountain. By the time we got to the Bubble 1, I was drifting in and out of consciousness. Saduk climbed in and pulled, while Smith pushed from behind. Once I was inside, Saduk hit the button to close the airlock without leaving first. What you doing?" I mumbled. "You're not going to be able to pilot this ship to orbit," he said briskly. "Does it have a go-home button?" "Yes, it does." Commodore Lorimar's voice rolled crisply out of the speakers. "But the ship will read Lieutenant Hernandez's condition and automatically bring the interior to Earth normal conditions to combat her hypothermia." Even 3/4 unconscious, I knew what that meant. Saduk would die before we got halfway there. His corpse would melt. I didn't want him dying because of me. I mumbled. "Pwerft. Power feed?" Saduk was on the ball. "Emergency power feed for the suit? One that doesn't require the cabin to heat up?" "Yes. But we still need to get her back here post-haste, or she'll suffer permanent damage before we can get down there to help her." Saduk helped me strap in, then located the power feed. As he plugged it into the suit, I saw his outer integument had turned a painful shade of green from the thermal radiation the cold suit was putting out. He gave me a very bubbler grin. "I'm not just an astrogator. I've also had pilot training. Let's see if it translates across." I passed out before he got the Bubble 1 off the ground. When next I awoke, it was in a medbay bed. Machines were hooked up and beeping on odd occasions, but nothing sounded urgent. Carefully, I wriggled my fingers and toes. Everything seemed to be still attached. "Ah, Lieutenant. It's good to see that you're still in the land of the living." I turned my head, which was about the only part of me that didn't have a sensor cord attached, to see Commodore Lorimar. Ma'am, I husked. Sorry about disobeying orders? She shook her head and made a dismissive motion. You were the senior officer on site. I had no place second-guessing your actions. Plus, you saved the bubblers and dealt with the Tanorak, so that's a bonus too. Her words reminded me. Saduk. I coughed, then tried again. Saduk. Is he survived? She grimaced. The cold suit was damaged by the thermal dump, which is why it wasn't sealing properly after. He suffered thermal shock to 2 of his tentacles and had to have them amputated. The big brains are working on prosthetics for him right now. But he's alive and well, and has asked to be informed when you were able to talk. The flood of relief through my body was tempered by the knowledge that he'd been hurt saving me. Drink, I rasped. Certainly. She retrieved a cup, then sat me up and helped me carefully drink half a cup of water. Afterward, I felt much better. Then, she retrieved a tablet and activated it. With some careful maneuvering, I was able to hold it amid the 36 medical sensors attached to my fingers and arms. Saduk appeared on the screen, grinning like a bubbler maniac. I could see the dermal scarring on one side of his face and the bandaging on the stumps of his tentacles, but he seemed to be in high spirits. Serena, he greeted me. Oh good, you're awake, and you're hurt, I said. I'm so sorry. I didn't want this. Hey, I survived. I'm just glad you did too. And they say they can replace my tentacles. Maybe they'll get me ones that don't melt when they touch a malfunctioning cold suit. He chuckled. That was the most exciting thing that's happened to me in a long time. I blinked. Okay, so, how did you survive the medics coming on board to get me off? That's how I lost the other tentacle, he confided. I hid in the starboard airlock and they came in the port airlock. But the inner hatch got really hot, so when I tried to fend myself off, youch. Before they got off, they reverted the controls so it went back and landed where we took off from. Just going to say, it was really good to be back on solid ground. Well, I'm glad you're mostly okay, I said. How's Captain Smith? Still writing his report, last I checked. Saduk chuckled. There's the Tanorak thing, and you melting the mountain thing, and how you were walking through molten magma, and how I went up with you and came back down with 2 melted tentacles. Wait, go back. Commodore Lorimar mentioned the Tanorak, and what happened to the mountain again? A cold ball was gathering at the pit of my stomach, and it had nothing at all to do with the temperature on Faz Reap. You melted it. There's now a valley with 2 much skinnier peaks on either side. They found remnants of the Tanorak craft on the far side. You melted them too. Saduk was deriving all too much amusement from the expression on my face. Oh God, I muttered. I am in so much trouble, aren't I? Saduk made a gesture of negation, a little difficult with his 2 missing tentacles. Not at all. You saved Smith and myself and wiped out a Tanorak raiding party. You're a hero. But I turned a mountain into a valley. Cheer up. Last I heard they were talking about naming the valley after you. He began to laugh. I had to laugh as well, because why the hell not? After all, it wasn't every day I got to rearrange the landscape and get it named after me.